thanks for joining me in the library again. This is the place where I keep all of my collectibles, from movies to CDs to VHS to vinyl to cassette tapes and whatever else I collect. It's all amassed here in the library, and so this is where we do Hellhound Film Club. Some years ago, I stumbled upon a movie called Breathless. I had heard about it a bunch, but I didn't really know much about it. I ended up blind buying it, and after the first watch, it instantly became one of my favorite movies that I had literally ever seen. Film nerds love it. Film snobs are too cool for it. Most of my friends have never seen it, and so that's one of the big reasons why we're going to talk about it today. Like I said, I honestly knew very little about this movie when I first bought it, other than that it was, considered one of the pioneering films of the French New Wave movement. If you're unfamiliar with the French New Wave, it's a period in which, starting in the late 1950s, French filmmakers rejected the traditional norms and expectations of cinema and experimented with new styles of editing, visual and narrative storytelling, as well as commenting on social and political situations of the time, often using irony or existentialism. See, in the 1940s and 50s, France had imposed restrictions on the number of American films that could be shown in theaters due to concerns about their impact on the French film industry. However, in 1946, in order to help eradicate France's debt to America, and in turn open markets up to American products, including film productions, a series of commercial French-American agreements were signed with which completed this process, thus opening French citizens up to a plethora of exciting and long-missed American cinema, with which was seen as a pioneer and leader of cinema in the early 1900s. The timing couldn't have been more impactful for people like Francois Truffaut, Agnes Varda, and of course, Jean-Luc Godard, amongst many others. Most of these filmmakers at this time were in their 20s and 30s, and they decided the time was ripe for challenging the convention and norm that had taken hold much of their cultural perspective growing up. I say all that because while there is so much to be said and attributed to the French New Wave movement at large, my focus is a bit more personal, and I want to delve into Breathless, which was originally conceived by Francois Truffaut, loosely based on a real-life newspaper article about a man named Michel Portel and his American journalist girlfriend Beverly Lynette. In 1952, Portel stole a car to visit his sick mother and ended up killing a motorcycle cop. Truffaut and fellow French director Claude Chabrol wrote a treatment for the movie but couldn't agree on the story structure. They eventually wrote to French film producer Georges de Beauregard, whom they had previously pitched Breathless to, and he liked it a lot, to endorse Godard as the film's director. He would be selected and end up writing the script as they were shooting, and inevitably change the course of cinema history. So, with that said, let's skip ahead to the movie itself, and then after, I'll dive into some of the more interesting particulars. Breathless follows a youthful criminal named Michel, who models himself on the film persona of Humphrey Bogart. After stealing a car in Marseille, Michel shoots and kills a policeman who followed him down a county road. Now on the run with no money, he turns to his American love interest, Patricia, a student and aspiring journalist who sells the New York Herald Tribune on the boulevards of Paris. Patricia unwittingly hides Michel in her apartment as he tries to secure a loan to fund their escape. Eventually, the situation goes awry and chaos unfolds. So, there's a lot more to the movie, but so much of it is just, it feels like it's happening in real time, and the timeline is moving so fast that it would really spoil it to go on any further. A few things of personal note to add that I really just love about the film and thought that I should note here as well. Godard conceived his vision of Breathless to look like a documentary, and so he tasked his cinematographer Raoul Coutard to shoot the entire film on a handheld camera with next to no lighting. In order to accomplish this, they had to make their own film spliced between two different sizes in order to fit the camera they had. Another thing that I thought was interesting, while they picked locations in advance, they didn't acquire any filming permits, and so everything was done guerrilla style, Some days they would shoot for 15 minutes and other days for 12 hours or more. It was all dependent on how many ideas Godard had ready and how long they could get into locations for. So, I recorded this after the fact because I had a conversation with my fiance, and it did bring up some interesting points that I felt would only be right to acknowledge here. So, as I was telling her about how the research had come and how everything was coming together, one thing I noticed is that in a lot of recent reviews of the movie, like particularly like Letterboxd and things like that, you find that a lot of the distaste for the movie, as much as I mentioned earlier that film snobs don't care for it, and I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that people that are aware of it for a long time, the lust is kind of gone once you know everything about it. But nowadays, a lot of people's, how do I say this? Like, a lot of people's distaste for the movie comes from what you might call prevalent themes of misogyny. So the main character, as you can probably imagine, isn't the most gentlemanly person and doesn't treat the character around him with a lot of respect and care, and can sometimes talk to her in a demeaning way. And while I feel it's important to acknowledge that, one of the reasons for me that it still stands as like one of my favorite movies goes for a lot of the things that I've said throughout this video in terms of its creation, its history, its the nature in which it was made, and just the characters. And the thing that I appreciate about the movie is that these characters are flawed, and it's not just the man or just the woman. They're both flawed in their own ways, and the way that the movie ends is kind of a repercussion of both of their flaws. And I obviously don't want to spoil the ending for you, but I don't approve of the way the things happened at the end with the characters, but I understand it from their point as much as I can. And so I think it's important that films not be afraid to show flawed characters so that we can learn what is right and wrong to take from these situations. And so I know that I had mentioned at one point, I made a comment about film snobs not liking the movie, but I felt that I should expand on that because it's not just fair to lump in people that don't appreciate its artistic integrity. There's also clearly a case for people that just don't agree with it morally or socially. And while I don't necessarily hold that same viewpoint, I do understand where that might affect somebody more than some of the better things about the film. So I just wanted to add that piece and recognize that while it's not a perfect film or perfect characters, it really is a perfect story in the sense of how flawed so many of us are as people and the repercussions that can come from that. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks for listening to this, and back to the regular program. All in all, I do this because I think it's important to remember and celebrate the work of the pioneers who came before us and made cinema what it is today for all of us to enjoy. While I know there are much better produced, much more knowledgeable dissertations on film, whether it's the movies I cover, the directors or actors I cover, or just the subject in general, I'm aware of that, and I learn a lot from these creators every day. The biggest goal that I get from doing a show like this is that people that know me for my music or for my artistic output can understand some of the things that I'm influenced by and can share in that joy and hopefully get something new to take in their own lives as well. I do really hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, drop a comment. Let me know if you've seen any Godard movies, any French New Wave movies, if you've seen Breathless before, what you think of it, if you loved it, if you hated it. Let me know if you're planning on checking it out after this, and let me know who else you'd like to see covered in future Hellhound Film Club episodes. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The Hellhound Publishing channel has hundreds of videos, from podcasts to live music concerts to behind the scenes documentaries and a whole lot more. You can also get all of these Hellhound Film Club episodes early by joining us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can learn more about that at patreon.com/hellhoundpublishing. Good night.